Democracy is not just freedom to criticize the government or head a state or to hold parliamentary elections. True democracy obtains only when the people have the ability to change the system of industrial capitalism that has oppressed them since the earliest days of slavery.
And when we speak, we are afraid our words will not be heard nor welcomed. But when we are silent, we are still afraid. So, it is better to speak, remembering we were never meant to survive.
Parfois, nous pensons personne n'a pensé à nous. En pile cause traverser l'esprit nous. N'a pensé à travail, difficulté la vie, cause ailleurs, cause jeudi. En pile cause qui préoccupe nous. Problème pour solution. Ou dit tout. Et puis, sans autant, nous checker boîte postale nous réaliser. Nous pas seuls. Dans moment ça, nous souris. Parce que gen yon moun, yon kote, qui a pensé à nous.
Before and during the revolt, the colonized always considers the colonizer as a model or as an antithesis. We continue to struggle against them. We are torn between what we were and what we wanted to be, and now we are making of ourselves. Have you ever had the space, the vision, the dream to thrive? It might be difficult to imagine even having the time to think about what that means, doesn't it? With all the value we have created on this earth, all the joy we have cultivated on this beautiful land, our labor is seen as our only worth. And to the people that hoard the wealth that we create, we are simply vessels to their enrichment and to our suffering. We are precarious workers. Our labor is only seen as temporary or on demand. Because of that, our work is insecure. We are underpaid, uninsured, and unprotected. We are treated like this for the sole purpose of concentrating wealth at the very top. We care for children, we care for the elderly, we care for the sick. We are essential to their well-being and their ability to thrive. Yet we are short-staffed, compensated very little, and receive no benefits. The reason why we fight is because the vision to thrive must be reciprocal and mutual. How do we thrive without infrastructure? To thrive is to have affordable public transportation, clean water, alternatives to energy like wind and solar, and building modernization to curb pollution. Floridian people who power this state cannot thrive without it. If we cannot thrive, we cannot create. If we cannot create, nothing moves. We, the working class, the Black, Brown, and Indigenous people of this land are the wealth creators and the job makers. These are the communities that have been excluded and harmed by environmental injustice. We thrive when the working class are creating the policies and implementing them. The ability to thrive means the ability to unionize the workplace freely, and in an expansive way that represents all identities that make up our beautiful planet. It is the recognition of Native nations that have existed here, respecting their sovereignty and their treaty rights, and ensuring self-determination. It's about avoiding a climate catastrophe, and it's about centering us as a part of the resilience. It's about ensuring fairness for workers. To thrive is to invest, to reinvest, and to invest again in our communities. Climate justice is racial justice. Economic justice is climate justice. Can you support this effort? Are you willing to participate in this struggle rooted in justice? This is about the trees, the water, the animals, the air, and it's also about you, your siblings, your parents, your cousins. It's about your nosy neighbor that can be annoying but would look out for you when you need them the most. It's about your coworker who maybe is a little unaware but just needs a small push to realize their importance to the world. Let me be clear. The issues we fight were not created by you. We are fighting back this extractive economy controlled by millionaires and billionaires that force us to exploit our labor and our natural resources more and more and more to line their pockets. This is not just about people working in a coal plant. The extractive economy impacts people working in service, hospitality workers, fast food workers, and other restaurant staff. We all need a change in order to thrive together. Are you ready to thrive?
Hello, my name is Sandra Dennis, and I'm the Executive Director of the Miami Worker Center. We are an action and strategy center. We do our work at the intersection of gender, race, and socioeconomic status. We base, build, and organize with tenants and workers. Right now, we have a historic chance for Congress to pass a transformational economic recovery and infrastructure package that will put 15 million people to work. In particular, Black and immigrant workers in Florida recovering from the COVID-19 pandemic, economic crisis, and structural racism, it is time that we act for them. It is time to build the power of women essential workers and realize that care jobs are green jobs. It's time to invest in them, expand, and respect the essential work of care workers. The time is now. Support the Thrive Act. Make sure that you call your elected officials and ensure that they're supporting their workers by supporting the Thrive Act.
Estamos en un proceso de lucha, de activismo por la defensa de los derechos de los pueblos indígenas y hemos venido en un proceso de resistencia, bueno, como siempre lo han hecho los pueblos indígenas por más de 500 años y seguimos enfrentando el colonialismo actual. Nosotras pensamos que, esta lucha que nosotros vemos en la comunidad no es aislada, es una lucha y es un problema mundial, es un problema en este continente, que no solo lo enfrentamos nosotros, sino que todos los pueblos que luchan contra el colonialismo y que tienen sentido de justicia y por la emancipación.
Hola, mi nombre es Susana Restrepo y soy la capitana de ayuda mutua del Condado de Osceola de la iniciativa Resiliencia ante Desastres. Durante este año hemos creado la red más grande de voluntarios y líderes de nuestra comunidad, impactando a más de 8.700 personas, llevando información valiosísima de cómo estar preparados para la temporada de huracanes. Pero estamos viviendo una crisis climática justo frente de nosotros. Hemos notado el aumento en la contaminación del aire, del agua. Hemos también visto el aumento de los desastres naturales, más tormentas, más incendios, más tornados. Tenemos que actuar y tenemos que actuar ya por el bien de nuestras comunidades y de nuestro planeta. Pero necesitamos que nuestra energía pase de ser de combustibles fósiles a energías renovables. Por eso necesitamos millones de empleos bien remunerados para construir una infraestructura energética del futuro. Por eso necesitamos pasar la ley TRIVE. Esta ley nos permitirá tener 100% de energía limpia generada para el 2035. Entonces te invito a que apoyes esta ley por ti y por mí. Apoya la ley TRIVE.
One of the things we've got to do, we can't just be going around here claiming to be American Indian Movement members and we're concerned about people and everything else. So we've got to really start doing stuff. you know, building community gardens, chopping wood, hauling water, whatever they needed done. I said, that's your responsibility. That's what a warrior's responsibility is. It's not just prancing around with a gun in their hand and thinking, showing everybody they're tough. I said, that is, in our society, that's not a warrior's role, right? I got my dignity, my self-respect, and I'm gonna carry that with me. Even if I die here. That's just my fate. The only thing I'm guilty of is struggling for my people.
Alisha mushka jukuna nyuka kashuti mimi lucero kani alpomama pimantami kani. Greeting relatives, welcome. My name is Mimi Lucero. I am a member of the Quichua Nation. My mom's territory sits on the Antisuyo region, and my dad's territory sits in the Isabela Island, part of the Galapagos Island. I am a climate organizer with Florida Rising, and we brought a little bit of what the Thrive Act will mean for Indigenous communities. So the Thrive Act honors frontline leadership, and we don't come to organizing spaces empty-handed. Organizing runs deep in our social structures, and we are resilient people full of solutions and traditional sciences to revolutionize land, water, and air management. And we deserve the economic support. We deserve to sleep in peace, not waiting to hear who's going to bid for our territories next. The truth is that we've lost many on attacks of extractive industry, and the government has allowed us to become an easy target. And we are an extension of the land herself. We'll always speak up for our children and our non-human relations. We'll always protect her. The Thrive Act promises to respect Indigenous sovereignty. And our grandmothers, our grandparents have made sure to prepare us for what the Thrive Act asks from us. Our food pathways, our stories, our ceremonies, our languages have been key to biodiversity and land preservation. And we are being asked to be radically bold, prophetic, and possible. Support us.
We are challenged as humankind has never been challenged before.
We know the dangerous catastrophic effects of
climate crisis,
the corporate greed of the fossil fuel industry,
COVID-19,
high rates of unemployment,
trying to pay off my student debt
while dealing with racial and gender injustice.
This is why we must pass the Thrive Agenda.
It's time to transform, heal, and renew by investing in vibrant economies.
Because it's high time that our federal government implement a just recovery to support Black, Indigenous,
working class, and immigrant communities.
These same communities are home to frontline workers who are getting sick and dying at a higher rate than anyone else.
We need to see jobs created that support frontline workers
so that we can continue to work while our loved ones are being taken care of, while they're the most vulnerable.
Our communities deserve to be healthy. We deserve jobs with living wages.
We need to build things in America again
in a way that isn't going to exploit the environment.
The Thrive Agenda retrains those who will be put out of the fossil fuel industry.
We have the resources, but we must bring them all together and make the connection between climate and the economy and race.
The Thrive Agenda moves us towards justice, sustainability, and right relationship with our Earth.
Support Thrive if you want green transit, green infrastructure.
We would be able to create millions of good-paying jobs.
Unionized, high-paying, clean energy jobs.
Clean air.
Clean, safe, affordable drinking water.
And the further strengthening of our union rights.
Those most in need cannot be an afterthought.
We need a sustainable way to do our work.
And I need my children and my children's children
to have a safe and healthy world.
Based on solidarity, cooperation, and self-determination here in Jackson, Mississippi.
Here in New York City.
Baltimore.
Inez, Kentucky.
Lansing, Michigan.
New Orleans.
Salt Lake City.
San Diego, California.
Here in my home of Alaska.
On Yoka territory, known as Fresno, California.
In Miami, Florida.
That's what the Thrive Act symbolizes for me, empowerment for all oppressed communities here in America.
We have the power and the ability to create
together and help people across the country get behind that vision as well.
To me, the Thrive Agenda says, "T'ilku nechidnu," we are working as one.
I don't think we have any alternative other than remaining optimistic. Optimism is an absolute necessity, even if it's only optimism of the will, as Gramsci said, and pessimism of the intellect. Randy Weingarten is president of the 1.7 million American Federation of Teachers, AFL-CIO, which represents teachers, paraprofessionals, and school-related personnel, higher education faculty and staff, nurses and other healthcare professionals, local, state, and federal government employees, and early childhood educators. Under her leadership, the AFT was one of the first national labor unions to endorse the Green New Deal and recently launched the Freedom for All to Thrive campaign to support the passage of the Thrive Act. To learn more about the campaign, visit aft.org.
I'm Randy Weingarten, president of the American Federation of Teachers, and I'm thrilled to stand with Central Florida Jobs for Justice and all of you in supporting the Thrive Act and everything it does to help make our communities greener, more just, and more equitable. In the face of COVID-19 and our mounting climate crisis, we have a historic opportunity to rebuild our economy and create a sustainable future for our children. And as we reckon with the myriad issues our nation faces, we see real urgency in the idea that things can't go back to the way they were. Our schools, healthcare, infrastructure, as we begin to recover and rebuild, we can't return to the status quo. If we want our kids to be able to breathe clean air and drink clean water, if we want a sustainable economy that provides decent jobs on which people can support a family, if we want our workplaces and schools to be safe, climate has to be on the agenda. President Biden's American Rescue Plan and the plan he's just proposed, the American Jobs Plan, proposes the funding that we need to get our country on the road to not only rescue, but recover, to build back better. All of our communities, all of our unions have to address all of this racial and social and environmental justice. And that's exactly what the Thrive Act does. These issues aren't in the abstract. The Thrive Act would generate almost 700,000 jobs for Floridians within the first year of implementation. Excluding other external factors, this would bring Florida's unemployment rate to less than 1%. With over $20 billion in investments in clean and renewable energy being sent directly to Florida, the Thrive Act would work to address the environmental concerns that Floridians care about in a non-ideological way, from algae, toxic algae, and to preservation of lands brought on by natural disasters. The increasing climate disasters we've witnessed and the infrastructure challenges they present have highlighted the fact that in order to create the future where people don't just survive, but they thrive, we must come together in new ways to innovate and build something more resilient and more sustainable in our economy, our schools, and our communities overall. Our children deserve to go to schools with clean air and clean water. Our communities deserve to have the infrastructure and the resources to support them in a moment of crisis or extreme weather. All of that requires a lot of work. And that work Contrary to what the Florida State Legislature says, and despite all of their attacks on workers, on voters, on public schools, on truth, must be done by union workers with the skill and expertise to get the job done right. The Thrive Act meets the severity of our economic crisis with serious, bold solutions. It will fuel our economy and center our most vulnerable communities. We give our frontline, and it will give our frontline workers real opportunity, real justice, and the real freedom to thrive. Please, let's fight for the Thrive Act.
Mary Kay Henry is the international president of the 2 million member Service Employees International Union, SEIU. In 2010, Mary Kay Henry became the first woman elected to lead SEIU. Her leadership is rooted in a deep-seated belief that when Black, Brown, Asian Pacific Islander, and white working people join together, we can make the impossible possible. Under her leadership, SEIU members have won major victories to improve the jobs of healthcare, property services, and public sector workers across the United States, Canada, and Puerto Rico. Henry's decision to back the courageous fast food workers and other service and care workers in the historic Fight for 15 and a Union movement has helped 24 million working Americans win wage increases.
Hello to everyone in the Florida Green New Deal Network, especially to my SEIU family, from 1199 United Healthcare Workers East in Florida, from SEIU Local 1991, and SEIU 32 BJ, Florida. We all agree Congress must pass the American Jobs Plan to build back better. Our country faces intersecting crises that demand immediate action: the climate crisis, the public health pandemic, the racial and economic injustices. And we know the Thrive Act would be transformational for working people on all of these fronts. It puts 15 million people to work in good union jobs. It would renew our climate and care infrastructure while cutting pollution and advancing racial and gender justice. SEIU members and families in every zip code are counting on Congress to make home care affordable for families and to make caregiving good union jobs. And Floridians know the importance of this. You've literally been in the eye of the storm as hurricanes get more numerous and intense and sea water levels rise. And you know the importance of ensuring our aging population can live with dignity and independence at home. Thank you for taking action today. When we fight together, we win together. Si se puede.
Are you tired of working for peace? Are you tired? No. Then for God's sake, let's keep working. And let's remember that the enemies that you've got, the enemies that we have in the military establishment are the same ones that the farm workers have. So I urge you all, let's all get busy next election, and we'll support those candidates that are for peace and that are for the poor. And I'm not talking about any Ivy League racists or any wishy-washy liberals. I'm talking about the people that are really with it. And if they're not with it, we're not going to help them. And if they're with it, we're going to help them. And we may have to even put up our own candidates in some cases.
Bonsoir. Non pa mse Joanne Péodet, et mse direktrice programme changement climatique dans yon organisation qui est Florida Rising. Jodi am vle partager avec nous une annonce sur une belle initiative k'ap développé dans pays. Initiative sa rele Thrive Agenda. Gen plus passé 100 organisations qui mettent tête ensemble avec membres congrès qui dans Capitol Washington DC pour développer un plan k'ap ka créer job, qui offre bon salaire et initiative qui va améliorer l'environnement côté nous habiter. Plan ça a bénéficié tout le monde. Qui ou c'est membre communauté noire, qui ou c'est membre communauté payol, qui ou c'est membre communauté indigène, tout le monde pourra bénéficier dans programme ça. Une belle opportunité que le programme ça offre, c'est que au moins 50% investissement pral dans communauté que me fait et partager avec nous. Et grâce à investissement ça yo, nous pral gain accès à un pile job. Initiative ça, li pral créer 15 millions de jobs dans le pays et dans l'état de la Floride, la créé plus passé 680 000 jobs. Et son j'aime te dire nous que job ça yo offri bon salaire. Donc m'a invité nous toutes pour nous engager dans l'initiative ça et moi je remercier nous pour petit temps ça nous bon moi pour me partager à nous ça avec. Merci.
Time is ticking, and our Congress has a historical opportunity to introduce a transformational economic recovery and infrastructure package that will help 15 million people and cut our emissions. I'm 16 years old, and as a Chilean, I want to see our country be a leader in this time of crisis so that I can have the right to a just future. I would like a clean environment, and I would like the right to have the same job as any other person would.
Hello everyone. 0 Hour Florida is super excited to support the release of the Thrive Act and the Thrive Coalition. This $1 trillion plan is one that has been formulated from movements and activists across the country, and one that supports not only recovery from the climate crisis, but recovery from the current pandemic. It is a plan that proposes 15 million jobs and one that has the support of over 100 members of Congress. It is the future, without a doubt, as it, number one, protects frontline communities, specifically BIPOC communities who will often face the worst impacts of the climate crisis. Number two, it proposes remediation as well as new technology, whether that be green energy and green infrastructure, as we work to deter the impacts of climate change. Not only this, as a young person, I advocate for this policy because as we move into sources and places of leadership in the coming years and in the coming decade, it's up to us to support the solutions that protect us, that will protect our most vulnerable communities, and lastly, protect posterity. And this plan with its 4 pillars of climate, care, jobs, and justice is the right plan for us because it is inclusive with activists' current calls and prolonged calls of racial justice, its calls of environmental justice, and calls for, of course, economic justice. So today, we ask you to stand alongside us and support the launch of the Thrive Act and the Thrive Coalition. Thank you.
We need climate solutions now, and when we're accounting for the need for energy efficiency and energy infrastructure, we cannot lose sight of economic solutions that place a huge priority on frontline communities of the climate crisis. Most importantly, Black and Indigenous folks who have historically been marginalized in so many times of crisis. The Thrive Act is really an opportunity that Congress has to enact efficiency and an overall solution to the climate crisis. I'm 18 years old, I live in the state of Florida, and I already know that by 2050, it will be too late for Congress to decide to just enact climate action. We need climate action now, and the Thrive Act is going to implement the appropriate action to make sure that I have access to a just and equitable future. Thank you.
Hi, the Thrive Act is a chance for Congress to pass a transformational economic recovery that puts 15 million people to work in good and family sustainable jobs, and by the year 2030, it will have cut climate pollution in half, plus it advances racial, gender, environmental, and economic justice. As one of the acts, the Thrive Act is important because it will invest in renewing our climate and care infrastructure, and it will invest in manufacturing and other sectors. This way, it will create 15 million great jobs while cutting pollution, advancing racial justice, and it will end the unemployment crisis. This is Thrive Act.
How do you organize timber workers? How do you organize loggers? How do you get loggers to talk to earth firsters?
And the first answer is you have to like loggers. That's the first thing. And I already did because, having been a blue-collar worker my whole adult life, the conditions of my life are actually more similar to them than to the privileged environmentalists in the city. And the actual interest of the workers is not expressed in the political spectrum in the timber wars. Instead of telling the timber workers what to do, which is the other mistake environmentalists always make, I asked them. And I asked them to tell me about their working conditions and their lives. And the way I would meet them, by the way, is we blockade them. And, here they are, and we're chained to their truck. They're not going anywhere. And, and that actually is really how I started meeting timber workers.
Hello, I'm Cheryl Rogers, DRI Community Captain of Glenwood, East Altamont. We are an unincorporated community located in Seminole County, Florida. We are a community of about 14 neighborhoods, and what's unique to us is that we have 9 retention ponds, and 2 of them are here. We also have one of our communities receiving their water from this water tank. Their water will stain their clothes, and it'll turn green if it sits in a jar for too long. Needless to say, this water is not good. Please vote yes to pass the Green New Deal Thrive Act. Black, brown, and indigenous communities thrive to breathe fresh air and drink clean water. We thrive to have cutting-edge education. We thrive to have job stability. We thrive to have meaningful and gainful employment with guaranteed strong wages and benefits. We thrive to overcome systematic racism and injustices of all kinds. Please help us to thrive by voting to pass the Thrive Act. Thank you.
Hi, this is Nessa Shitakutli of the Farm Worker Association of Florida. Today I'd like to talk to you briefly about the Thrive Act. We at FWAF support the Thrive Act because it is a bill that would offer some community-based solutions to some of the most pressing crises that our country is facing right now, such as climate, racial, and economic justice. For one, it would create up to 15 million jobs for people who are in desperate need of work right now. It would offer up to 50% of funding for communities and grassroots organizations so that they can implement some of those solutions that they have been working on for years and generations. It also takes great steps towards creating a Green New Deal, and we support that. The time is now for Congress to pass the Thrive Act and make a real change. This is the chance of a generation to make this happen. Please call your congressman or congresswoman and ask him to support the Thrive Act. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Betsy Marville, and I'm the nurse organizer with 1199 SEIU United Healthcare Workers East Florida. I help represent over 25,000 hospital and nursing home workers around the state. Right now, our members and their neighbors in the Tampa Bay area are threatened by an environmental disaster. A long-neglected water reservoir that holds toxic runoff from an old phosphate mine is leaking and threatens to break. As millions of gallons of toxic water is pumped into the rivers and streams and ultimately Tampa Bay, at-threat neighborhoods are being evacuated. My healthcare provider union members know that you cannot be healthy without clean water, clean air, and a clean and safe place to live. The Thrive Act is about building a better America where such disasters are prevented, infrastructure is renewed, and the legacy of lack of environmental accountability is addressed for everyone. Thrive is about a livable wage and it having union jobs because workers must have a voice in how their business is done. Thrive is an investment in people, not corporations, and that is what we need to be a healthy, just, and resilient country. Please join me in supporting the Thrive Act. Thank you.
I think you are all ready to thrive. How do you do it, you ask? We have a historic chance for Congress to pass a transformational economic recovery and infrastructure package that puts 681,000 people to work in good union family-sustaining jobs in Florida, cuts climate pollution in half by 2030, and advances racial, indigenous, gender, environmental, and economic justice. It's called the Thrive Act. Fill out this form and we'll connect you. Tell them to do everything in their power to pass a comprehensive economic recovery package that works for all people. When you click the Make the Call button, the system will call your phone and patch you through, so please have your phone ready. The link is www.greennewdealnetwork.org/Florida. Thank you all for joining, and let's thrive together.